welcome to another episode of Listening to the Voices in Our Heads with me, Jenna O'Malley, your soul writer, storyteller of fantasy with a dash of romance. My first series, the Arsinoe Forest Alliance, keeps me occupied with all types of immortal creatures in a historical setting. Books 1 and 2 are now available on Amazon, and Book 3, Bound by Vengeance in Mind, launches on June 1st, 2022. Cover reveal and pre-order kick off on May 1st. Of course, you can find my YouTube channel under Jenna the Soul Writer, and my newsletter, The Sunwalker's Side Quest, is the best place to enjoy a sample of my writing each month. I'm also one half of the duo behind the Authortube Writing Conference, alongside SD Houston, which is coming to YouTube in July 2022. Check my Linktree /Jenna the Soul Writer for the various hats I'm balancing right now as an award-winning author, cat mom, coffee addict, English teacher, authortuber, and lady nerd. Who are we chatting with today? We're visiting with the author of the Shadows Creed Saga, an epic fantasy series inspired by Bushido, the Samurai Code of Honor. This story is by Noelle Nichols, told from multiple points of view, and dives deep into the consequences of duty while analyzing the power of family and friends. She also endorses the Japanese philosophy that every encounter is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and we should always try our hardest. She claims to be a dreamer, a student of life, and writing is where she feels most at peace. Her stories do focus on those characters who want to see how their actions fit in the world, not necessarily vice versa, and it's these stories that she has needed throughout most of her life. Her characters and their experiences are an exploration of life itself, and she has found that the most incredible and the most unpleasant of herself do sometimes bleed to the surface. She hopes that through the magic of reading, you'll find yourself in her characters as well. Needless to say, lovelies, today's episode is going to be very nerdy and very, very otaku-centric. Therefore, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, and of course, take care of yourself. You're worth it. Now, wait a minute. Let's do this appropriately. Ikimashou! Hello there, my lovelies. Welcome to another episode of Listening to the Voices in Our Heads with me, Jenna O'Malley, your soul writer. We're visiting with another author today, a dear friend, Noelle Nichols. How are you today, my dear?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm absolutely wonderful, thank you. It's a joy to have you here finally. So, tell us a little bit about you. You claim to be an author, artist, and dreamer.
Yeah, so it's just always been like I'm one of those people that live and breathe creativity. I just like to have my hands in everything. So what I mostly do is I write epic fantasy books that are inspired by anime mostly. I've always had a love for like the Japanese culture. I've always really enjoyed it. And so I've noticed because I've had my book out for about 4 years and everyone who's really loved it has always been like, "You know what? This reminds me of an anime." And I was like, well, go figure, because, I kind of always picture it like in my head when I'm writing it. So my main series is called The Shadows Creed Saga, and the first book, Shadow's Hand, is currently being revamped. As you can see, I was like in the back, I actually have one of those little proof copies.
I
So
was
it's
wondering if that's what that was. Thank
it
you for
is.
confirming.
It's got the cheesy little banner. It's not quite finished yet. I had a revelation of the title. So I'd be like, pull out my hair. I was like, something's not working with it. Something's not working. And then I got an idea, and it's like amazing. So I'm waiting for like the final reveal.
Right.
Anyways, I digress. It's it's a story about it's inspired by the Bushido Code, the Samurai Bushido Code. They're not samurai, but they're like
Right.
samurai. Like they have aspects of samurai and ninja, and specifically the Bushido Code. So we have the Shadows Creed, which is basically like their honor code. So it's very similar to like the Knights chivalry. Very
Yes.
similar. So it basically is very much a story of morality and just trying to do what's best. And so you kind of go along with these characters and you encounter enemies, I know, enemies, who basically kind of make you think about, is this really wrong what they're doing? Because I've always loved that aspect of point of view and perspective. Like, it's like I'm over the black and white, like this is evil, this is good kind of thing. So we have our main character, Kilo, who is very introspective and just really wants to do right by the world and by himself. And, he's kind of had like this past that has really nurtured him to grow into this person. So it's this epic quest for justice, trying to track down these people who have kind of befouled his honor. And, with samurai, it's very, like honor's their main thing. So
Yes.
it's like, don't like that you're doing that, so go on this adventure of trying to uncover this mystery. And then we also have Shenrei, so it's multiple points of view, because as if I couldn't make it complicated enough, we have another point of view. And she's kind of like the younger one. She's in training, so she's just learning all this for the first time. So
wait a minute. Pause. Do we have a senpai kohai relationship going on here a little bit?
Just a little bit.
Okay, thank you for confirming. Go on.
Yeah, it's like originally when I wrote it, she wasn't in there. And then I was like, there's something missing here. I was like, that's very important, in Japanese culture is the mentorship. That's very important. So we have a bunch of actually mentors for all these characters, and they have like these deep bonds of just like mentorship and just like striving together toward a goal. So once I added her in, I was like, this is it.
That personal bleed is very tempting, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've gone through a lot of writing therapy through this book.
Thank you. Yes, writing is therapy. Totally agreed. So, clarification question. Do you classify yourself as an otaku or a weeb? Because they're not the same.
They're not. One's kind of like offensive, in my opinion. I'd consider myself an otaku because I'm not like super obsessive. I like to respect the culture and kind of like enjoy things in my own way, but not like to the extent that it's like, man, I'm like really super fixated where you're, like, let's just say we don't go there. We're very respectful.
Fellow otaku agrees. Anime was my lifeblood in ways that younger generations will never understand.
Mm-hmm.
It is now mainstream.
Yes.
When I fell in love with it was like a secret club.
Yep.
It literally felt like Fight Club rules sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
In the lunchroom, if you were an otaku in the 90s and early 2000s when I was in high school.
Yep.
So,
same. Right there with you.
Welcome. It's good to see you made it into authordom with me. Thank you for being here with us today for sure. This is going to be one heck of a blast of a conversation because you're going to have two anime nerds on screen. Buckle up, lovelies. So, first question or two or three are going to be ones I typically ask that are more about your author life or life in general. So you did mention epic fantasy. Do you read that as well as write it? If so, if not, what's your favorite genre otherwise? Because if you're doing anime and the literature related to it, manga, there's way more than epic fantasy.
Oh yeah. Epic fantasy it's kind of sad because I guess as you get older, like your tastes change a bit, and I feel like I consumed so much epic fantasy like in my early days that I'm almost like burnt out on like epic fantasy in general. Like I was really excited because I picked up this epic fantasy book and I was like, man, it's just not like speaking to me as much as it has.
Right.
So nowadays it's like I still read some of it, like I still really love the fantasy stuff, but I have kind of like geared more towards like the Japanese novels, the light novels. I've been trying to find like I want to say like the more mature like dialogue, like descriptions, because there's like a spectrum with the light novels of where it's like really simplistic and the dialogue is really like simple, and then you get to more of like the dense stuff like 86 and Spice and Wolf and stuff that's more like descriptive and stuff. And so that's more where I've been loving it. And here I have something that's really cool that you're gonna like. So I have this group that's called the Otaku Creators Community. And
What?
yes. It's like I didn't even know we were going to get into this stuff really here, but it's basically a bunch of otaku who write books that are anime inspired, who do like manga and light novels, and we've started to kind of throw out a new genre name. So it's like lit RPG, but it's anime lit. So it's like
because that's part of my next series, Vitalangica. Oh my god, we gotta have a chat about this more after. But tell us in brief what to look forward to, because there are some people in the Authortube community who are probably also, like me, a closet otaku and really don't talk about it much. So, tell us in brief all the beans you can share.
Yeah, I mean, it's really just, it's come from like trying to find my readers, really. I was like, it's not, my book isn't mainstream. Like, I knew that. Like, I tried getting into the groups with like the epic fantasy people, like all the like the cool kids. I was like, man, I still feel like I'm that closet otaku. I'm like still that weirdo. So I was like, you know what? I was like, everybody really seems to like anime who likes my book. My book is more or less inspired by Rurouni Kenshin. So
I was hoping that's what you would say. Oh.
so like the pieces started coming together because I was like, because one of my taglines, like I just rewrote my blurb, it's Rurouni Kenshin meets epic fantasy, and that's like the thing people are immediately like, what? So once I kind of got that in place, and then I started talking to other authors because I started on Instagram, and I was like, I'm the only one that's posting like manga and light novels along with books, and I was like, there's got to be more people that like anime. And then I was like, is it just like, it's like, does it get back to like the 90s? Is it what it used to be where it's like
It's what
everyone's
it's been
ashamed?
feeling like,
Yes.
yes.
It's like so I hated that because I wrestled with it for a long time with like the name otaku. Like it's just like, man, I don't want to be like that weirdo where people just immediately dismiss me because it's like, oh, you're like an anime fan, you like blah 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 blah. I was like, no, it's like I'm not like one of those extreme weird people. It's like there's certain storytelling aspects that I love and themes and stuff.
It's more guilty pleasure, but
Yes.
not in a toxic, obsessive,
Yes.
all-consume. It can be. As I'm looking around my room going, you know, you have so much stuff in here that's calling you a liar. But at the same time, I can detach from it and still live life, is what we're saying.
Right. Yeah, there's a healthy relationship there. So it's just been eye-opening finding those people, and I was like, we really need to. And like the more people I gather, we're still small, which I like because it's like a close community. We have like 60 people. I was like, that's a lot of people we
It's
have.
your lunch
Yeah.
table, if you will.
Yeah. It's like I don't need like all the people, but it's like keep drawing people in. They're like, oh my gosh, like I really, it's like I love anime, and this book reminds me of like reading a manga. Like you can see it when you read it, and I was like, I know. And so it's finding that like clarity and like confirmation that there are other people out there like me. That's just been like the most amazing thing to happen this year. So excited.
Thank you, definitely, for sharing that. That was extremely eye-opening and enlightening. So, she didn't know that I'm a secret otaku, I think, when I messaged you all these questions.
Nope.
I figured it out because of what she told me before I wrote the questions. So, welcome to my world. My second series, Vitae Atlantica, has references to Sailor Moon, like Saint Seiya, Yodori Dan Samurai Troopa
Mhm.
type anime, and stuff from the late 80s, early 90s. So it's very nice to see someone else who came out of that that's also seriously writing for with those things that we grew up with
Right.
in mind. Thank
Mhm.
you. So our next question, has writing always been in your life? I think I may or may not know the answer to this one because of what otaku tended to write. If not, then what else?
Well, I know exactly what you want. I was like, okay, so I had this fan fiction that I wrote. I didn't post it though, but see
Oh.
the funny thing was it was frustrating for me to write because I was like, why am I writing fan fiction? It was from Inuyasha, and I thought it was
Not a bad
super clever
choice.
at the time because I was like, you know what? I was like, Sesshomaru was always like super upset with his brother falling in love with a human. I'm gonna do the same thing to him. And then lo and behold, the new series, I'm like, oh my god, it was my idea. Anyways,
Yep.
so I
Yep.
that's what spurred me to write my book, but before I was a writer, because I started writing this book actually in high school, and then I got some feedback that was maybe a little less than ideal. That kind of made me want to stop writing for a while because I didn't know too much about writing. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna pursue writing later. And so what I used to actually do was it's kind of the same thing, like fan listings. I don't know if you remember what or
Yes,
know.
yes.
I used to like do a bunch of fan listings. So I build the website, make all the little graphics, and say I'm a fan of this series, this TV show. I
Yeah.
used to do that for a long time, and then it switched, and I started making anime music videos. Go figure. So I was into that for like 10 years. I entered like conventions and like I won awards from that and everything. But what I always liked about it was the story. Like I liked taking music and I liked crafting the story from the shows. And that's like my favorite part. And then I was like, you know what is the next place to go? And I was like, well, I have that story. And really what spurred me into doing it was NaNoWriMo, because I love challenges, and just the challenge of writing 50,000 words in a month really just got me to write. And then I was like, you know what? I really love these characters. That's the one thing, like, I just really have never been shy of like dedicating myself to like the 10-year, 10 plus year process of writing and building a world. So that's kind of been my phases of where I've gone.
Wonderful. So are you participating in Camp NaNoWriMo for April this year?
I am actually.
Wonderful. Same here. So it's
Yay!
welcome. My husband forced me to admit this recently myself, somewhere else on my channel or elsewhere on another Authortuber's channel. Neftiri, the leading lady from one of my novels, actually came out of a fan fiction. She and like 2 chapters in book 1 are the only true, I would say, leftover connecting threads worth noting, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's interesting to see how you've grown, because I often tell people I don't like admitting that I wrote fan fiction, but at the same time, for some people, that's a safe place to
Mm-hmm.
experiment and learn, and there
Mm-hmm.
is zero shame
Oh yeah, I would
in that.
totally agree. I've had a few friends even like come to me. It's like the same like ashamed, embarrassed, like I've been writing this fan fiction. I was like, it's totally fine. I was like, do what makes you happy. It's like, you don't have to worry about building the world, like naming things, and it's just like a fun way to like, experiment, and things do grow out of that, whether you keep the characters the inspiration, or whether you're like, why don't like it's like I have the talent to do this. I was like in the drive, it's like I'm just gonna write my own story.
Right, and that kind of reminds me of something one of my students also said, because they admitted to me recently, I write fan fiction, Miss Jenna. Is
Oh
that bad? Is that, they were like, is that illegal? Is that copyright infringement? So we had actually like a good
no. Mhm.
class talk. I said, can I spin this into a class-wide conversation tomorrow? Because you all are going to learn something that you need to know about research
Mhm.
papers from it anyway. So made it class appropriate. And they said, so if I wanted to become a better writer, solely meaning I wanted to practice like skills writing, getting better at my grammar, my formatting, is fan fiction safe for that? And I said, yeah. So don't hesitate. Just because
Mhm.
it's easy doesn't necessarily mean you're using it to get published.
Mhm. Right, yeah, and it's like, don't be afraid of people's opinion either. It's like,
There you
man, it's
go.
like, you can't let people stop you from enjoying what you enjoy. It's like, someone's always gonna say something anyways, so.
They're entitled to their opinion. They're
Yep.
not allowed to hurt you for it. So, for our next question, then, my dear, what is your biggest fear and your biggest excitement as an author?
I would say I'm gonna start with the happy one first. So my biggest excitement is when people actually talk to me about my books and my characters. That's like the most heartwarming thing, where they're just like, "Oh, it's like it's one part where Keela did this one thing with his sister, and it's just like I really
Yes.
loved that moment." And I was like, "Man, it's like that's like my definition of success right there, is when somebody's like it like lives in their head, like they think about it and like it struck a chord with them." So that's my biggest excitement, and I wish people would feel more open with talking to people, because like some of my best friends have come from readers who were just like, "Wow, I really loved this book about this thing." And we get to talking and it's like same thing. It's like, "Oh, we like anime together. We like this character. We like thinking about the world." So some of my best friends have come from that. So I always really enjoy whenever author or readers reach out to me, and then you kind of like get to talk about your world. My biggest fear would probably be like that one day in the future where I'm gonna not be able to write. It's like it's like, oh, it's gonna happen that one time when it's like I lose the drive and I just can't write anymore. That's gonna be like the most soul crushing day. So it's like my biggest fear. It's like it comes away.
I came out of my author career, came out of a period of that actually. So it hurts. I will forewarn you, you're expecting it to soul crush. It might a little bit. It hurts. It really does. I started teaching, and teaching, people do not realize how highly creative the teaching profession is if you do
brain just couldn't handle outputting into both as much anymore, among other things going on. So definitely understood. I'm afraid of putting it out there again, I guess, is what I should say. Some people have said, I've gone through periods self-care. That's my biggest suggestion. Self-care and self-care.
Yeah, I found that like just continually filling the well is really my biggest thing to help with that. It's just like it just needs to be excited about things, like whether it's like researching something new, or just like even watching a new anime or watching a new TV show, or reading like watching a new music video, like that stuff. That's question.
I'm gonna segue right into it, and then we're gonna keep going.
Yeah, but it's like as long as you are excited about something, like it doesn't matter anymore really like what you're writing as long as you enjoy it. It's like, so I wanted to for this one for Tenku, like it's basically a ninja who sees memories in the rain. So it's fun because I have all these books now on the weather and the atmosphere and like lightning and just learning how the river works and can you set it out and stuff. So it's just like learning new exciting things, or even having design like a castle. It's like Japanese castles are like murder traps. It's like the most amazing thing ever. So it's just like continuously learning things and just being so invested in your work that you don't even really have the time, I guess, to worry. It's like the biggest strategy of mine. It's like I'm just gonna throw myself into this like obsessively, wholeheartedly, and just see where it goes.
Agreed. And you said the Japanese castles were designed to be murder traps. Yeah. Immediately the gamer said in my brain was, no wonder the shinobi games suck. It's very realistic. They know why. Because as long as you take them super hard,
So definitely, yes. What other tips do you have for surviving your inner self-critic? Like things you do in your routine to keep you excited that might not even be necessarily related to the writing process?
I would say it really helps me to have a routine and just a schedule. Just really helps me because then I feel like when I'm making progress, I feel better because even if it's small progress, I'm still moving forward. I have like that momentum. So that's really one of the things I always try to tell people is like I know for some people it works.
Being inspired to write, like waiting for that moment and then just writing. But for me, it works better if like I wake up at like 4 or 5 in the morning and I write for 2 or 3 hours in the morning before work. And that's kind of that routine of, okay, it's time to get up, I'm excited to write, I'm just going to write, and I'm just going to explore. Like, I don't have, like, an outline or more of, like, the pantser type. It's just really is, like, an exploration. It's supposed to be fun in the sense that it's, like, it's work, but it's still fun. So it's not, like, super fun, like, joyfully, like, running, skipping, kind of like that. But it's fun because it's hard, and it's, like, the process of doing that. So, like, keeping that perspective in mind and sticking to a routine really just helps me not worry and setting deadlines. Because if you have a deadline and I have to publish a book, I can't really sit here and change this paragraph like 8 million times,
I literally just had a conversation with my editor at the beginning of this month. I had to submit my third book for the first pass so it can get published on time. And I told her that in the email. I literally had to send this to you. I know it's rough, but otherwise I would have just nitpicked forever, and we would have never gotten it on time. So 100% understood. As far as your relationship with manga and animation, you kind of hinted at it a little bit sooner. Like, what year? Was it high school you got into that? Was it something you did after high school? Was this something you trained in for your career in college, perhaps?
Yeah, so I actually majored in 3D animation.
But I'm video editor, so it's like I didn't really go into my field. But the thing I always like, I love animation, but I don't love 3D animation. It's like I've always really enjoyed like 2D animation. You can just do so much more with it, which is why I really enjoy like manga and anime, is because it takes you more into like the fantasy world, and you have like a deeper feeling to it. So I was always a little sad that I didn't have the skills to draw yet, which is one of the things I've been working on is learning how to draw better, because it's one thing to draw a character like this. It's another to make them like stand up and actually like
Yes.
move. So it's only been recently, like the past 2 years, where I've had to draw like the covers for my books, where I was like, okay, I'm going to start dedicating time to learning how to draw better in hopes that eventually I'm going to get to this. Last year, I actually did my first 51-page manga one-shot.
Yay!
So I finished it and I submitted it to the Shonen Jump Tezuka, I think, international contest.
Yes.
I was really excited because you had you had 4 months if you would have started on time. I did it in 2 months. Never again. Never again. It was
So
terrible.
you lived a mangaka
Yes.
apprentice life for 2
Yes.
months. For
Yes.
those of you who don't know what mangaka are, they are the apprentice artists who study under the big, huge manga creators and help them do like text placement or line cleanup. And they're learning the business and perfecting their art style, I guess you could say,
Hmm.
through apprenticeships. So their work hours are like 3 or 4 jobs a day, 3 or 4 hours each. So wow, that's a long work day. How many days a week were you doing a full 5-day work week, or just whenever you had free time?
I did it every day around my full-time job. And it was like I'm usually really good. Like I'll work until like dinner time and then I take a break. But for this, like I did not literally have any time. So I was working all the way until like bedtime. And you can imagine, like, this is why I was like, I have such more appreciation for like manga artists and like
Yes.
animators, because it's just like it takes so long to draw and like perfect it. And I was like, man, at one point, like the last few days, I just stayed up all night. Like I've never do that. Like I hate doing that. Like even in school, like I never did all-nighters because I hate it. I think it's detrimental to your health. But here
It
I
is.
am. I was like, I need to finish this one shot because it's like, by golly, I was on a mission and I was going to do it. And I did it. And I'm really glad I did it. But again, it's like it's the same thing with my novels where I started drawing it, and by the time I hit 51 pages, I had gotten better. And I was like, oh no, now I have to start at the beginning and like draw it again.
And if you were a famous on your own sustainable series manga creator, that's where your apprentices would have come
Right.
in.
Right.
To kind of loop the conversation back around, per
Mhm.
example. Wonderful. So you're still doing the manga and the animation, not only just for your books, but are you doing it for others now too, or starting to?
I'm not. I've done like a commission work, just like an
Mm-hmm.
illustration, which is I don't enjoy commission work as much, to be honest. Like I don't feel like I have enough time for my own craft, and I don't like
Gotcha.
other people's expectations, I guess. But I mostly just do it for myself. I was doing well. It's in progress. It's going to take me a really long time, but I have this 8-minute short film that is actually the prequel to my series that I have been designing the characters. So I have the script written, I have the characters designed. I still need to like finish the colors. I started storyboarding it. Um, so it's started, but it's also one of the things where it's like, man, juggling the time is like the struggle of my
Yes.
life. It's like it's either writing at this point or animating. I was like, I need to find a better balance or like something. So at the moment I haven't worked on the animation, even though I'm like super excited about it, just because
Mm-hmm.
again, it's like I'm still at the early stages of storyboarding. I just need to like do the key poses and stuff, but I'm excited to get back into animation again because like I really did enjoy my time animating. It's just I always wanted to draw it. And so now that I can sort of draw better, I'm like, this is a lot more fun doing it. I did a head turn. Which is
So this is giving people a little bit more of a appreciation for like older animation, right? Because like beauty and the beast, which was really not that far ago in history, it was even certain awards, not just because the music was great, it's one of the highest awarded animations of its time because of what you're saying. It matters for research collection.
yeah, my secret.
So let's elaborate on some of the other differences between being an artist and an author. Looking at process.
which I mean, they're really similar, like the steps. It's like even like the great stages of when you post on Facebook and then you're like the like, oh, this is bad, this looks better. Oh, this is so good. Like that whole step toward the creative process is really in both of them, and it really has like they complement each other because they're used to, okay, this is the first draft, this is the sketch, it's gonna be tomato first. So it's like knowing that that's how it works. That's the process is, it's not always gonna be sometimes we end up to like something like, wow, it's amazing, it's your first time, or like, wow, I love this paragraph, it's like the most amazing paragraph ever. It does really overlap just how you approach it, just because I think the creative process is just it starts off with nothing, you like hone it and polish it and you make it pretty into something as opposed to you can start here and so you do see it more like a cycle where you're looking at it and you need to go back. Like you said, like one of the particular pictures, there's one you could fix it. Oh yeah. I've really learned that my writing process is like if you put too much about details, you don't go anywhere. So same thing with drawing, like if you're too obsessed about like the hand position, like if you're too fixated on that, like you lose the bigger picture.
Hyperfixation is
Mhm.
a productivity killer. What about manga and animation made you a stronger writer, or vice versa? Because this is kind of going on that whole picture
Mhm.
is worth 1,000 words vibe.
Mhm. Yeah, so when I do actually write, I do see it very much like a manga page. Like I do see like the foot coming down, the close up on the eye, like the sword being drawn, and it's like the
You
slash.
too?
Yeah.
Okay, my editor normally yells at me for zeroing in on stuff like that.
Really?
And I'm like, I know it comes from anime and I don't know how to describe that to her.
It's like
Thank you.
it's my favorite part is like that was even in like in my definition when I was like, what is like an anime like lit book? I was like, it's really more about like and it's like trying to describe that to other people are like, how is that different than a normal book? I was like, well, it's like focusing on all of the moments. Like Studio Ghibli is really good about like we're taking the cup, we're going to swish the cup first and wash it out before we're going to drink, as opposed to saving time and money, just drink. It's like the difference between getting straight to the action and savoring the moment because this is about like the Japanese concept of ma, where it's my
Yes.
favorite, where you just like you are in the moment and it's just a breath between beats, and it's like so much in this world we're just like go 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 go, and it's like we're missing the in between and like savoring and enjoying, and that's really what I like about just like what I've learned is just like savor the process, the in between. So that's really what I focus on when I write is I just want that atmosphere. I want the details, the sensory details, but not to make them as sensory details, but just like bring the reader into that moment to like breathe.
And to give a theater similarity, in theater we would call them not necessarily moments or beats, but maybe stills or pictures.
Mm.
And anime capitalizes on that. As far as your script writing for your animation and things, do you think the more you're writing your novels, your script writing's also getting better?
I would say so because one of the things I haven't experienced yet with the script is, or I guess what I took from writing is I knew how to write like a character arc. Like I knew how to develop the character. And so when I write my scripts, it's always like, okay, like I know that I need a scene here, but it's like, why is the scene here? Like, what is the purpose of this scene?
You mentioned in previous correspondence, we had that being a free spirited creative is a key component to the creative process, or maybe just both of your animating and writing processes. What is a free spirited creative exactly, according to your personal definition?
I would say this is somebody who embraces all aspects of the creative process and not just celebrating and focusing on like the good. It's really more about embracing what's bad as well. Like you need both the yin and the yang of a need to learn from my mistakes, and those need to happen because it'll help me grow. And I also need to celebrate when I've done a good job, because that also is like, what's the point if you're not going to like feel accomplished about it? So I really believe that being like a free spirit is more about just enjoying and having fun and seeing what happens, as opposed to having, like all these expectations of it has to be the number one bestseller, and I need to have this many people like this, that many people like this. So it's really more about just enjoying it and exploring it and just like nurturing it and watching it grow, as opposed to, putting yourself into all these situations where this needs to happen, that needs to happen, this needs to happen. And then, it ends up, you just put all these expectations and requirements on yourself. And you can't enjoy the thing you're creating because you're so boxed into, I need to make the grammar perfect here. I can't like play with the sentences. Like, it's more about just, what, so what, you write a sentence that has terrible grammar, it's like, what's going to happen? Like, you'll fix it later on, you'll edit it, you'll get it there, but like, don't be afraid to try things and just have fun with it and see where it goes.
Love the way you described that. And honestly, with it being Camp NaNoWriMo month, I think that's an extremely strong message to give to people, because during NaNoWriMo events, it feels like the competition level gets really, really, really heavy for some people.
Mm-hmm.
The only person you're in competition with is who you were yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
even then, it's not a competition. It should be a celebration.
Mm-hmm. It's a cycle.
And
It
my
takes a while.
husband's gonna say, practice what you preach. Anyway. But yes, it is a cycle. You're very true. You're very right. And do you think some creative people lock themselves into like gilded cage of doubt, not just imposter syndrome, maybe perpetuated so, that prevents them from doing more? If so, why or why not?
I have a very dear friend of mine who is kind of like the definition of this. Like, I love her to death, but I've watched her struggle so much with just the perception of like even who you think you are, but who others see you. Like, I can't do this thing because I write this. I was like, I can't do this or that because people see me this way. And it's always been very disheartening to me, because I'm like, why not? Like, why can't you like unlock the cage and be who you want to be? Because nobody is really expecting you to be anything, to be honest. Like, nobody is like, oh, you're this person, you have to like XYZ, and that's how you've always been. It's just because like you change as a person, like it's inevitable. Like, even with my epic fantasy and falling out of love with books about it, like you grow, like you learn new things you're excited about, you say goodbye to things in your past. But a lot of people do really hold on to, this is who I am as a person, I can only be this thing, like, and so it's sad to see it that way. But it really should be almost like a celebration, or like freeing to even know you can reinvent yourself. Like, tomorrow I could be like, I don't want to write about samurais anymore, I want to write about mechs and like magical schoolgirls and stuff, like, why not?
Yes. Would you, if you were to go do mech based over samurai based, would you do a different pen name or keep it all under one with this pretense?
I would keep it under one. I just really
Okay.
think it's like people worry too much about the marketing. Like, if I have an author I like if I like your stories, I like it because of who you are as an author, not because you're writing about this particular thing. Like, I more or less, I think it's changing to the part where the author themselves, the creator themselves, is more important than the thing. And so we need to embrace that there are different sides of ourselves. Like, you can do more than one thing. It's just like, grr, I hate that when people say it about marketing, is like you need to like separate your different entities, because that's like what everyone's told me throughout my entire life is you can't write books and draw stuff and do this too. And I'm like, well, why not? Like, I'm not going to be like
Why
these.
not?
It's like, that's who I am as a person. It doesn't make sense to like split myself into three different people.
We have a couple of questions left, so let's keep on chugging along there. How can people learn to be more like a free-spirited creative, and what are the benefits beyond the creative process? So bleeding into if you have a day job, or bleeding into family or charity or other endeavors you might volunteer with, and so on.
Hmm. One of the things like at my job is like my manager really appreciates the fact that I'm okay with like the messy parts of any project. Like, I'm not afraid of trying something and failing, because I have learned that my best stuff comes from just like blarging and getting it on the screen and then like sorting through like the words and the mess, as opposed to, you know, like sitting down, okay, let's make a plan about this. It's like, let's just see what's going to happen, as opposed to like overthinking something to death. So I do think that having a certain amount of like spontaneity and just like having that playful mentality of looking at things with like a child's eyes, like an open mind, like Japanese no mind, of stop thinking about it, like no
Yes.
mind, don't think
Yes.
about it, just do it, like it's in your blood, you've done this, you've written this, you've drawn this, like you've done this all your life, like at this point in your life you've made it how many years, how many days, like you know how to live. You've made it this far, like
Right.
what's going to happen, like oh no, you have to be like sorry, like I'm sorry that happened, like this, you know. It's like, so what if you look like a fool, but you, like you can always take something away from that, like oh, that one time I tried that one thing where I thought I was going to do stained glass and guess what, didn't like that, that was really hard, but what I learned from that was the dedication and the process of planning, and I can take that into other aspects. So it's not like it's wasted. Like I didn't waste my time. I just
Right.
enriched it by like learning different things. Being like, well, that didn't work. Now I'm going to try something else. You know.
It's very much about the mindset. Notice the words that were used there. It's not so much a strain or a depletion, it's an enrichment. I love that word choice. So, what are 5 tips for cleaning up messy drafts, or whether it be drawing or writing,
Mhm.
before sharing them with your beta readers, beta viewers, editors, and so on?
Mhm. The first one I would say would be to look at the big picture, because at this point you probably are fixated on the little tiny details about how that hand looks really stupid or that paragraph looks really stupid and doesn't fit. So I would definitely look at the main picture first before you like zero in and obsess about one page or one detail, because you're never going to get very far if you do that. Like, trust me, I know. It's like, don't worry about the first chapter, like you're going to redo it like a million times as the first chapter, like get the book in order and then like draw from it and come from, you know, the end with what you've learned from the whole book. So don't fixate on the details, look at the big picture. I would also say to really look at the intention of what you want to do. That's another big one. It's like, okay, you have this big character moment in this story, did you put in the pieces before it that's going to be intense enough? Like, is it believable for you to, like, say a betrayal is happening? Like, before somebody is betrayed, we have to know that they're a friend. You like have to see the relationship of like the deep bond and how hurtful it's going to be. You can't just be like, you're a longtime friend, oh, betrayed, and like you don't get like the emotion behind it if you don't lead up to it. So intention's another big one. I would also say like I've been learning more about like deep point of view. So like I've been really into learning how to get rid of like the author's voice. Like you want to get rid of that. So like I don't need to tell you what Kilo is doing. I need to show you how he feels, how he's interacting in the environment. So it's like learning how to remove that. It's a very stylistic thing. Like not everyone writes in deep point of view, but it's like learning more about your style. You know, so I need to like focus on what I want to happen in this and just remove like things that are going to hinder it. I mean, again, I would go back to saying, because this is important, I do a deadline, because I feel like you can get in that rut of like obsessing about it too much that you're never going to go anywhere. So I would be like, okay, get it to where it's good enough. Like a big thing I've read about or like watched about and learned about is like the 80% rule. Like
Yes.
once you get something to 80%, like is that 20% really going to matter? Like 80% is all you need to do on any project, and that's kind of been, it's been really meaningful for me because I want to do a lot of stuff. So it's like, okay, 80%, let's get it to where everything's working. Sure, some of the language is a little rough, but at that point you need feedback. It's like if you want to continue honing it, you need feedback from an editor or the beta readers. So that's another important one. Don't obsess forever, just get it to where it's working.
Mm-hmm.
And my final one, what should we
Dun,
do
da, da,
for the final
da.
one? Double check your placeholders in your name.
That's actually a good thing to check because I've gotten called on that.
I have too. It's like, oh, you used the wrong character name here. It's like, oh, or I have like insert name here. I'm like, oops, sorry. So that's an important thing. You can get away with that until a certain point, but you probably need to sort it out before you hand it to anyone else because they don't like live in your brain. So
True. And that could be part of the pause. Maybe you need to take the, because they say take time between drafts,
mhm.
unfamiliarize yourself with
Mhm.
it. So
Yeah, that's a good one.
is that applicable for animation and drawing too?
Oh yeah. I mean, one of the tricks that you can actually do when you're doing illustration is I don't know if you've watched like any like time lapses of people, but you'll see
Yeah.
they'll flip the screen a lot because that gives you fresh perspective of what it looks like is when you flip the screen so you can actually see it with the new eyes. So that's one of the tricks of doing it. You can also like step away from the screen because if you're like, like up here, if you step back and be like, "Oh, that thing right there isn't working." So time is definitely a good one. I always leave myself with extra time with a project just
Mm.
because I know I want to come back to it. I was like, okay, I'm done, but I'm gonna wait until tomorrow to like look at it one last time because maybe it's like I want to make sure if there's any last details, or especially when I am struggling with something where it's like, I'm not sure about this. I'm just gonna let it rest for a little bit. And then when you come back to it, like, okay, I have this idea I want to try, as opposed to you just get so frustrated, you're like, I just can't do it anymore. It's like, right,
Right.
time.
Right. Don't be afraid to work on something else and come back.
Hmm.
So it's been a wonderful, enlightening, inspiring hour. Let's go ahead and start winding down here. Let's get some shout outs to others in your community. Other authors, creatives, or anyone in your support group you'd like to shout out to.
I would say, like, all of the writers that are in the anthology I'm working on are just the most amazing human beings. There's 14 others of us, and it's just being that brave to kind of put something that's new out there has just been so inspiring to me. It's just like because we're basically embracing something that's maybe a little weird to some people, or be like, wow, we're finally admitting that this is who we are as writers. So I would try to list all 14 of them, but I'm sure I'm going to miss one or two of them. So like all the people in the otaku creators community, like I love them so much. They just have given me so much life, and it's really just been like mutual because we're trying to do things for each other. Like we're helping each other illustrate. We've been like beta reading for everyone. Like it's just been this really uplifting thing, and that's sometimes hard to find in the author community. Like there's a lot of great authors, but there's also like very much like those cliquey groups, and just like if you're not in the cool kids group, or like there's this weird competitive edge, like so it's just I really admire everybody that has really been working on me with that group. They just are amazing, and I'm really hoping when we release it this summer that it blows up and it's just going to be this big moment for all of us because I couldn't have done it myself. It's really just been a group process.
Well, I would love to have all of you on closer to launch date, as many of you that could gather together just to talk about
Mm-hmm.
the process of being an anthology team. So
Mm-hmm.
definitely do not hesitate to join us again, my dear. We're going to go ahead and wind down then, my lovelies. It's been a wonderful hour or so here with Noelle, and finding out that there's other otaku out there that are now authors of, I'm assuming, the indie variety, it seems like. And therefore, let's go ahead and wind it down with the best way. I'm going to ask our dear friend to tell us about any upcoming events, launches, where do we find them next, and so on. And the screen is yours, my dear.
Thank you. So basically what I have going on is the really big one in June. On June 1st is when the anthology, the anime lit anthology, will be released. It's actually a charity anthology. We are donating the proceeds to the Animator Dormitory, which basically helps underpaid animators in Japan. And it is also going to the Anime for Humanity, which goes around to conventions like kind of touting mental health. So that will be releasing in June. And I also have my upcoming rebrand of my series, which is all new cover art and second edition. I actually fully embraced the Asian genre. So I actually added in Japanese terminology, which is pretty exciting. So you get the full immersion of it. And that should be happening by this summer. I will also be putting up the pre-order for book 3. And hopefully we shall be hearing some other exciting news about my web series, but I'll leave that one a tease until I know for sure. And that is all that I have to tell you. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, and really good choice on ending with the teaser there. Now I'm super curious,
Suspense.
lovely. Suspense. All right, then. Thank you so much, my dear friend, for joining us today. And for those of you in the audience, take care of yourselves a little bit better each and every day. We know you're worth it. Bye.